I just recently upgraded to the Canon R5 Mark II. Let's talk about why, and more importantly, should you? Hey channel, welcome back to Robert White Photography. Yeah, recently I upgraded to the Canon R5 Mark II from the original Canon R5, a camera that you guys know if you followed my channel, I love. Anyway, the Mark II has been out since August of 2024, so as of the time of this taping, it's been out a couple of years. And there are literally hundreds of videos out there on YouTube comparing the Mark II with the original Canon R5 that you can find and get more information. I am not a camera expert. I am not going to cover everything about this R2. And I've not had a lot of practice with it yet, to be honest with you. I mean, just got here, a few days ago. So I've been out once to shoot some birds at a local pond, and I'll show you some of those photos. But let's dive into my reasonings, and maybe it will help you if you're sort of thinking about upgrading to the R5 Mark II. Okay, I was originally hesitant to upgrade to the Mark II when it first came out. I loved the R5. I watched a few videos when the R2 was released, and decided that most of the upgrades were for the folks that did video with these cameras rather than still photography with these cameras. I was a little bit wrong in that initial assessment. I didn't think that I would use all of the upgrades to the still photography. We'll talk about some of those in just a minute. And honestly, it was just a little bit too expensive for what I felt was, at the time, some minor upgrades. But I think I've changed my mind about that, so let's dive in. Okay, so first let's talk about how I upgraded my R5 to the R5 Mark II. I went through an organization called KEH. You can find them at keh.com. Now, I am not affiliated in any way with KEH, nor do I believe they'll ever see this video. So you can sort of trust what I'm saying when I say I've dealt with them for years, sold a lot of my camera gear to them, purchased a few things through them. In this case, I did a trade. I sent in my R5 for them to evaluate. They came up with a quoted price that they would pay me for my used equipment, and I keep my equipment in pretty good shape, honestly. So I got what I thought was a fair trade-in value for that camera, and I could apply that. They can either pay you in cash if you're not planning on trading it in, or they give you a trade-in credit for the same amount that you can apply to something you're buying from their site. So I went to their site and I looked for an R5 Mark II that was in like new condition. Now they've got several different ratings from good, better, excellent, like new minus, like new plus. They've got some various ways they grade camera equipment, and I found one that was like new minus, and I said, you know what, I'm going to opt for that. So I put my trade-in credit on that camera, and when it came, I got to tell you, I've looked it over pretty thoroughly now. There's not a scratch on it, so like new minus really looks like it just came out of the box. They are a fair organization, I have found, and if you are looking to buy some gently used equipment at a fair price, or sell some of the equipment that you don't need anymore, I highly suggest going out and checking out KEH. They're a good organization. All right, well, first, the best improvement over the original R5 I think the R5 Mark II has is the autofocus. From everything I've read and every video I've watched, that is the primary improvement over the original. And once I had it in my hands, I went out to this local pond and shot some birds, and indeed, the autofocus seemed to grab hold of that eye quicker and stick and stay on the bird better. I'll be honest with you, I'm very impressed with the autofocus capability of this camera. It also has this neat thing called people priority. You can program, you can record some folks in, like, say you're trying to record a basketball game. You can record your son's face on this camera and register that face in the camera, and it will look for that face and prioritize that face when it comes to focusing while you're shooting, not only for stills, but also for video. The next thing is action prioritization. Let's say you're trying to film a volleyball game. It recognizes when a ball is about to be spiked over the net, and it will train its focus to prioritize that movement and better capture in focus those things. It's just simply pretty cool. And last, in the area of autofocus, something I saw when it first came out, I didn't think I would ever use, to be honest with you, and most people who were reviewing the camera at the time said, it works, but it's a little gimmicky. I have yet to test this, but I look forward to going out and giving it a try and seeing. I'm still not sure that I'm going to use it all that much. It is an eye control focus. What does that mean? Well, the viewfinder on this camera is much larger than the original R5, and that's so that it can track the movement of your eye, and it can focus wherever you're looking in the frame of the EVF. You look over here, it's going to focus on that. If you're following a car in a race and you focus over here, you look over here, it will focus over here. It follows where you're looking with your eye and maintains focus at whatever you're looking at inside the EVF. That's kind of next level. Now, does it work? Is it good? I don't know. I'm going to have to test it, so stay tuned for future videos where I give that a try. Maybe I can follow a bird easier. I don't know. Easier than the eye detect focus? I don't think so. I think that'll take priority, but we'll see. All right, let's talk about the sensor in this camera for a minute. It has the same size sensor as the original R5, 45 megapixels. That's a good size for me. It's big enough where it allows me to crop in on things, and when you're doing wildlife photography, you crop in a lot. It allows me to crop in on things, but isn't so large, like 100 megapixel, that the file sizes are just huge and unusable. So it's a good sort of middle ground for me. I like it. But the sensor is different here in the Mark II than it is the original R5, in that it is a back illuminated stacked sensor. Now, what does that mean? Well, it does a couple of things. First of all, it allows a blazing fast 30 frames per second in electronic shutter mode. 30 frames a second. That's crazy fast. It's got dual chips in there that allow this faster processing, and the processing happens at 14-bit, which is a little higher than the 12-bit on the original R5, which is going to result in better photos. It also fixes the concept of rolling shutter. Now, if you know anything about sensors, the way the sensor reads a photo, reads what it's seeing in the field, is it reads it line at a time from top down. It does it super freaking fast, but it does it from top down. That means if you're videoing moving subjects, like you're passing a telephone pole in a car, or you're watching the swing of a bat in a baseball game, that's a pretty quick action, and by the time it reads the top line on the sensor and then gets all the way down to the bottom line of the sensor, fast as that is, the subject has moved slightly, and it causes things like that telephone pole or that bat to be warped a little. It's called rolling sensor. You see it on some bird wings as well. Well, the Mark II has a much, much faster processor, reads those lines incredibly fast. It's not a global shutter like I think Sony has a global shutter where it reads all lines at once. But this thing reads individual lines multiple times faster than the original R5, which means you are greatly reducing the chance of having that rolling shutter effect in this Mark II. I like that because I don't want any distortion when it comes to photographing birds, wings, or fast-moving subjects. All right, moving on to the next topic, and this is one that's really cool in my opinion. It's called pre-capture. Now what pre-capture does is, you know, when you're out shooting a bird, for instance, on a branch, and you know it's going to take off or it's landing, but you can't quite get the timing right. By the time you push the shutter, the bird's already flown off. Good Lord, how many times have I wanted to catch a bird when it opens its wings and gets ready to fly off? By the time I get the shutter pushed, the bird's gone, out of frame, or it's way up here in the corner of the frame, you know, and out of focus, by the way. Pre-capture takes a continuous looping 15 shots at a time in milliseconds, okay? 15 shots at a time, and just continually rotates that when you press the shutter button halfway down. And then as you see that bird lift off the branch, you press the shutter all the way to take the frame, it goes back to the previous 15 shots that it just took before you took the actual photo. And it saves those photos, those 15 photos. Therefore, there's no anticipation loss anymore. There's no missing the shot because you didn't push the shutter in time. The camera captures it before you push the button. I can't wait to try this. I think it's going to be so cool. Now, the downside of pre-capture is you got 15 shots at full resolution. You're going to fill up a memory card really, really quick. So use this function sparingly, and you can program buttons where you can turn that function on for a minute, use it, and turn it off so that you don't have it going all the time. So space is an issue. Be careful with that. All right, let's talk a little bit about hardware differences in the Mark II versus the original R5. One I've already hinted towards, and that is the larger EVF. I got to tell you, the one thing I didn't care for on the R5's EVF is it always looked a little washed out. I couldn't see vivid colors that well. It all just seemed a little neutral and sort of desaturated in the EVF. Not the case with this, as I was paying close attention to that when I was shooting these birds the other day. Much better EVF from a color standpoint, in my opinion. And it's bigger. It's easier on my eye. I can see more. I like the EVF quite a bit. All right, let's talk about the battery for a minute. The good and bad news is it uses a different battery. This battery is called the LP-E6P. It is different than the original R5 batteries in that it is more powerful. That is the good news. It's more powerful, so it can do things like capture those 15 frames per second and handle the power necessary for the faster bit rates and for some video things we're going to talk about in just a minute. It just needs a more capable battery, and this battery is definitely more capable. Other than that, same size, fit, function of the battery, but the camera itself, different from the original R5. There's a port down here, a USB-C port. You can charge the battery in camera. That was not a possibility in the original R5. That's great if you're in the field and you just need a quick recharge. You forget your charger at home or whatever. You can hook up a USB-C cable in here to a power source and charge it in camera. That's awesome. Also on the other side of this camera, it has a full-sized HDMI port. Before, this used to be one of those mini HDMIs, and it was impossible to get a cable to stay in there, and they're kind of flimsy connection. This has a full HDMI port. If you're using an external monitor to show as your digital viewfinder while you're shooting, or you're just outputting to a screen somewhere that you want to see, now you can do it with a full HDMI port on the side. That's awesome. And of course, this is all rubberized and dust and water resistant. Also, this camera has a better in-body stabilization, IBIS. It's only slightly better, 8.5 stops, which I think the original R5 was 8 stops. So a little bit better stabilization, which helps people like me who frequently take shots handheld and not on a tripod. Allows you to do that in lower light situations and still get crisp photos. Lastly, let's talk real quick about the video improvements of this camera over the original R5. For you video shooters, a big one is the ability to shoot 8K in 60 frames per second. Before that was not capable, it was 30 frames per second on the original R5. You can do it in 60 frames per second on this camera, and there's no overheating issues because this new body has vents built into it that help airflow and help keep it cool. I never had a problem with overheating on the original R5, but I wasn't doing 30 minutes of 8K video, either. So I was only shooting with it maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds, 30 seconds at the most of 8K video. I never really had a problem with overheating, but this camera body does a much better of handling the overheating process and just keeps it from doing that. Also, when this camera is in the slow motion mode, when you're recording at 60 frames a second, it still captures audio. You can get audio in slow motion, which I've heard was not a capability that the original R5 had. You could shoot in slow motion, the original R5, but you wouldn't have the audio. Here, you're going to have the audio. Of course, it'll be compressed, but still, you have audio, which is important. All right, channel, well, that's going to do it for my initial thoughts on this upgrade to the Canon R5 Mark II from the original R5. I've got a lot of practicing and a lot of buttons to figure out on this thing, so I can't wait to get into that and bring more to you later. But thank you for sticking with me through this video. I appreciate your time today, and we will talk again. Until then, happy shooting, and God bless.